Sequels are very tricky to pull off. Everybody knows this, especially when it comes to horror films. Can you have the same effect? Can you scare people the same way? How do you continue the story? And do you do it in a different way, or do you rehash the original? Uh, do you continue the story, or do you do something completely different? So, I mean, there's a lot of factors involved, and I do appreciate it when horror films, if they go on to have sequels, I do appreciate when they get it right. You look at something like The Exorcist 2, which you think they could have gone any number of ways, but they went the way of the John Borman film that we currently all know. And look at kind of the disaster that was the reception of that film. So that's no good. I don't know. I personally thought the movie was okay, but as a companion to The Exorcist, of course, it's just horse shit, really. The one sequel that I think makes a very interesting stance and does some great things with continuing the story, bringing us the same things that we came to like about the original, and really I feel is a worthy companion and close to equal of the original is the Omen 2, or Damien the Omen 2, as it's called. And, if we can stop to appreciate for a second how many different ways they could make an Omen sequel, because I believe either it was Richard Donner or David Seltzer, neither were involved with the sequel, said that, okay, if we were going to do a sequel to The Omen, we would have it set up the next day after the events of The Omen with Damien in the White House, which is kind of an interesting idea, because in the first Omen film, as you recall, Robert Thorn, played by Gregory Peck, he was an ambassador, and he was actually good friends with the President of the United States, so they had a buddy-buddy relationship, everything like that. So, I mean, maybe he was Damien's godfather, so to speak. So that would have been an interesting direction. But then, okay, that's a concept. It's not really a plot, is it? So how would they follow from that? Just the same old shit? Like someone finds out about Damien, blah, 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 blah. Everyone dies, blah, 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 blah. It's the same kind of stuff. And with The Omen 2, with he is indeed the main character, which is cool, which is interesting. It is, in part, kind of the same stuff. Finding out about the prophecy of the Antichrist and trying to stop it, and people dying along the way, the stuff that you can expect, the same formula from the first film that worked, so well. But what we have with the sequel, with Damien as kind of the lead character, we have a very interesting conflict, don't we? With a young man, he's just entering adolescence. He's a preteen. I think he's 12 years old in this movie. He begins to realize who and what he is, which that's kind of mind blowing, isn't it? Like, that's an interesting way to develop a character where he's not so much a plot element, he's a full-fledged character. As much as I love the original Omen film, I mean, Damien, he says like one or two words or whatever. Here he is indeed the lead character of the film, which I think is a great decision, and I think it pays off. And to, all credit, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe it was Harvey Bernard, the producer, who produced all things Omen, as far as I know. Yeah, he has a story credit to this. It says so on the back. Story credit by Harvey Bernard. So we can credit him for that kind of piece of the puzzle falling into place, which I think works really well. But of course, we have the same old stuff. So basically, there'll be spoilers, just so you know. Premise is, it's a couple years later. Damien is living with his uncle, played by William Holden. So we again kind of piece together the Thorn legacy, where they're kind of, I don't know, what, blue bloods maybe. They're come from like a well-off family, of course. Where Robert Thorn, played by Gregory Peck, he was in kind of like politics mode. He was looking to seek out eminence in the political world. His brother, he is more of a businessman, owns Thorn Industries. So we have this character, Damien, who's in line to, as an orphan now, he's in line to inherit, kind of all the political association of his father. But now we have this uncle, businessman. He's in line to inherit the business because he's sort of adopted by him. He's a cousin too, who becomes like a brother to him, in a weird way. It's sort of like, not like beat for beat or like whatever. I'll go back to like Bible school or whatever. It's kind of like a Cain and Abel, like a reverse Cain and Abel story, brother against brother. Interesting conflict there, where his cousin finally learns himself, and the conflict there, and in both of them, which is great. There's a great scene, sort of near the end, where we see the conflict in both these young men. Not quite men and not sure what to do, how to face life. Very effective, very good, and all the scary stuff along the way. And I think, for what it's worth, I mean, though maybe not as memorable as the first film, it has really good, like, shocking scenes. Like, we have this journalist who's friends with the photographer from the first film, the one who gets his head lopped off by a sheet of glass. She had heard things from this guy. Maybe he made a call to her, like, while they're out flying, whatever, finding the bones and stuff. We buy it, whatever. So she's kind of picking up where he left off. She's finding out these things about Damien that don't quite make sense. She's asking his uncle, asking his aunt, who's not his aunt by blood, but his second wife, which is very important. Well, I guess I'll say it now. Well, apparently, I mean, we can't really quite piece together if there was a divorce or if his wife died. I'm betting she died, and in unusual circumstances, I'll bet as well. Then he meets this new wife, who's played by Lee Grant. She's one of the followers, right? So she's kind of secretly protecting Damien the whole time, which is cool. How there's all this conspiracy about it. But anyway, the photographer, she gets her eyes like pecked out by crows, which is very cool. And someone gets impaled by a train, which is also cool. In the elevator shaft in Thorn Industries, Buddy finds out that this is funny. Like, there's a little accident at the factory. He's like, well, let me put up in the computer, see if everything's all right with Damien, because it doesn't seem to be showing any symptoms of, inhalation of this, blah, blah, blah. What? Jackal blood? What? I better report this. Then, the evil forces at work, like the Final Destination type, accidents that happen. He gets, like, split in half, which is pretty cool. Probably, to me, the scariest parts, at least the parts that kind of speak to my fears, were two scenes in this movie. The first is the opening scene, actually, where we follow these two archaeologists. One is actually the archaeologist / exorcist from the first film, the guy who gave Gregory Peck the daggers and said, you got to use these, you got to kill a kid. They uncover this ancient artwork and statues that play a part in the foretelling of the prophecy of the Antichrist. He sees the picture of Damien in the newspaper, like, little boy was orphaned, blah, blah, blah. He looks at this, like, mural of the Antichrist, and it's like the spitting image of Damien, and they both look, and they're like, wow, that's crazy, we better do something about this. Boom. Then the whole temple caves in, sand coming down, blocks coming down, they're, like, up to their, like, necks in sand, and they're going to be buried alive in sand, and that is so, that creeps me out. Like, to be buried alive would be so terrifying, especially when it's, like, so slow, like, as it is in this movie. Like, the sand's just, like, slowly making its way up, making its way up. Very scary. And another, probably, being a Canadian, this has always been a fear, the ice scene, where they're all ice skating, and the one man who's, he's well, I feel like I've explained it, but there's a whole important element to the plot where Thorn Industries, they're kind of making these dealings within the Middle East to appropriate rights to certain synthetic foods, where if they're able to profit off, the trade deals that begin to cause famine in certain poorer countries. They can sell their food for cheap and make huge profits. Basically, profit off of famine is the general idea. But he's very much opposed to it. He thinks it's unethical. He's the one kind of head honcho within Thorn Industries, and someone who Damien's uncle very closely confides in and trusts his professional opinion. He's kind of preventing that, which is no good. That's no good for Satan's plan, right? So a terrible mistake that happens. He gets on the ice and it cracks. He falls into the ice, and what's worse is like the current takes him under. So like there's the opening in the ice, and he's like fighting for his life, trying to get out, but it pulls him under. Then he gets to another opening, then it pulls him under. That is so terrifying, I think. So buried alive and drowning, those are two scary things to me, and I thought they were done so effectively and scary and shocking in this film. So there's good scares and good general plot to it about the conspiracy behind Damien, about his followers, his aunts. He attends military school. Even the guy in charge, the sergeant, the admiral. Sorry, I don't know military. Corporal, maybe? No, not corporal. Officer, whoever. Kind of in charge of the school. Gunnery sergeant, I don't know. Played by Lance Henriksen. In an earlier role, kind of cool. He's a follower of Satan and things like that. So everyone's kind of looking out for Damien, and everyone's kind of making sure that those who get in his way get theirs. So it's creepy. Is it as good as the first film? I don't think it is, but I think it's very close. Again, it takes kind of everything that worked about the first film, and it does it. I don't want to say replicates it, but it puts its own stamp on its own types of scenes, if that makes any sense. And most importantly, it extends the story, or it enhances the story, or it continues the story in a very interesting way that legitimizes Damien as a character himself, which I don't think a lot of movie series, especially when it comes to the demonic scary kids, would, quite frankly have the balls to do, because what's scary? A little demonic kid is scary. A 12-year-old who realizes he has incredible powers and knowledge is not inherently scary, but they make it scary within the reality of this film, in that there are bigger things coming, and there are people around Damien who will kill for him and follow him. And I think that's a brilliant way to continue the story of The Omen. I think it's a fantastic sequel. I think it's very worthy. And again, I think the whole trilogy is great, but this really hits the right marks. I love it. It's great. And William Holden, great. Kid's name, I think, is Jonathan Scott Taylor. Good job, kid. Liam Remick, great. Jared Goldsmith returns to the music. Wonderful, wonderful score once again. Just a all-around perfect sequel, in my opinion. So that's my review of Damien Omen 2. I love it. So thank you very much for watching. Be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And stay tuned. I'm going to be talking about The Omen 3. And until next time, I'll see you later. And stay scared.